Have you ever watched someone trade your love for someone else's money? Have you ever stood there, smiling through tears, while the person you trusted chose a richer future over you? I have. And I remember every single word he said that night. "You're a wonderful girl, Emma, but love doesn't pay for the life I want." I believed those words had destroyed me. What I didn't know was that 18 months later, the same man who walked away because I was broke would be carrying a silver tray, serving drinks, at my billionaire husband's charity gala. And when our eyes met, he nearly dropped everything. But before I tell you how that happened, let me take you back to the night my entire life fell apart. If you love emotional stories filled with betrayal, unexpected twists, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's begin. My name is Emma Collins. I'm 22 years old. Until recently, my entire world fit inside a tiny apartment in Queens, New York. The walls were old, the heater barely worked, and every winter, my mother and I stuffed towels under the front door to keep the cold air out. Money was always tight. After my father died from a heart attack when I was 12, Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. She cleaned office buildings during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store at night. I watched her hands grow rough, her smile grow tired. Yet she never complained. Instead, she always told me being poor is temporary, giving up is permanent. Those words became the foundation of my life. I studied harder than anyone I knew. During the day, I attended business classes at New York University on a scholarship. At night, I worked as a waitress in a small Italian restaurant. The tips paid for groceries. The paycheck covered rent. Every dollar mattered. Every hour mattered. I didn't dream about luxury. I dreamed about peace. A home where my mother could finally rest. That's where I met Jason Miller. He was handsome, confident, funny. The kind of man who could walk into any room and make people like him within minutes. He wasn't wealthy. At least, not when we met. He worked as a junior sales representative for a real estate company. He used to stop by the restaurant every Thursday after work, always ordering the same thing: chicken parmesan, sparkling water, extra bread. Eventually, he started staying until my shift ended. Then he'd walk me to the subway. A few months later, we were inseparable. For almost 2 years, Jason made me believe that love could survive anything. When I worked late, he waited for me. When finals stressed me out, he brought me coffee. When Mom got sick, he drove us to the hospital. I honestly believed I'd found the man I'd marry. Then something changed. It started slowly. Jason began talking about expensive neighborhoods, luxury condos, private clubs, designer watches. At first, I thought he was just ambitious. But ambition can quietly become greed. One Friday evening, Jason called. "Can we have dinner tonight?" Of course. He sounded unusually serious. We met at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Manhattan. It was beautiful. Far nicer than anywhere we'd ever been together. I smiled. "What's the occasion?" He forced a smile. "We need to talk." Those 4 words immediately filled me with dread. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Jason looked away. "Emma, I've met someone." I felt my heart skip. "What do you mean? Her name is Chloe." I stared at him. "And she's the daughter of Richard Bennett." The name sounded familiar. Then I remembered. Richard Bennett, one of New York's biggest real estate developers. I looked back at Jason. "You've been seeing her?" He nodded. "For a while." While we were together, he couldn't even look at me. "Yes." The city lights blurred through my tears. "Why?" He sighed heavily. "You deserve the truth." I almost laughed. "The truth? You've been lying to me for months." He lowered his head. "I want a different life." "What does that mean?" "It means—" He paused. "I'm tired of worrying about money." "So am I." "No, you don't understand." He leaned closer. "I don't just want to survive. I want penthouses. I want private jets. I want influence. I want the life Chloe can give me." I whispered. "So you're leaving me because I'm poor?" His silence answered before he did. "Finally." He said the sentence that stayed with me for the next 18 months. "Love doesn't open the right doors, Emma. Money does." I felt something inside me break. "You really believe that?" "I do. I'm choosing my future." I looked into the eyes of the man I loved. For the first time, I realized he had never truly seen me, only what I couldn't give him. As he stood to leave, he placed a $100 bill on the table. "At least let me pay." I slowly pushed it back toward him. "I can pay for my own dinner." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Take care of yourself." Without another word, he walked away. Outside the restaurant, a black luxury SUV pulled up. A beautiful young woman stepped out. She kissed him. He smiled. Then they disappeared into the Manhattan traffic, leaving me alone beneath the city lights. When I got home, Mom was sitting on the couch knitting. She looked at my face and immediately knew. He left. I nodded. She opened her arms. I collapsed beside her like a child. Between tears, I told her everything. The rich girl, the lies, the money, the dreams he'd chosen over us. When I finished, Mom quietly took my hands. Emma, the right person will never make you feel poor. They'll make you feel priceless. The next morning, I almost didn't go to work. I almost didn't go to class. I almost gave up. But while standing in front of the bathroom mirror, I remembered something my father used to say. Your circumstances are temporary. Your character is permanent. I wiped away my tears, looked myself in the eyes, and made a promise. I will never beg someone to choose me again. That promise changed everything. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. I worked longer hours, graduated near the top of my class, entered every business competition I could find, applied for internships, read books while riding the subway, learned from every failure. Little by little, the broken girl Jason left behind disappeared. A stronger woman took her place. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. An elderly gentleman walked into the restaurant. Unlike the other wealthy customers, he thanked every employee by name. When I accidentally spilled a few drops of coffee on the table, I apologized immediately. Instead of getting angry, he smiled. You handled that mistake with grace. I've made bigger ones. I laughed nervously. So have I. He noticed the business book sticking out of my backpack. You study business? I do. For fun, for survival. That answer made him smile. We talked for 15 minutes about entrepreneurship, leadership, and second chances. Before leaving, he reached into his pocket, pulled out an elegant black business card, then slid it across the table. If you're ever ready, come see me. I looked down. Printed in gold letters were the words that made my heart race. Edward Sinclair, founder and chairman, Sinclair International Group, one of the most powerful business empires in America. I looked up to thank him, but he was already walking toward the exit. I had no idea that accepting one simple business card would completely rewrite my future. For nearly a week, I carried Edward Sinclair's business card in my wallet. Every morning, I'd take it out, look at it, then put it back. It didn't feel real. Why would one of America's most successful businessmen want to meet a waitress from Queens? The logical part of me kept saying, he was just being polite. But another voice whispered, what if this is the opportunity you've been praying for? On Monday morning, I finally gathered the courage. I called the number. Sinclair International Group, how may I direct your call? My hands were shaking. My name is Emma Collins. I met Mr. Sinclair last week. There was a brief pause. Then the receptionist replied, one moment, Miss Collins. A few seconds later, another voice came on the line. Miss Collins, yes. This is Mr. Sinclair's executive assistant. Mr. Sinclair has been expecting your call. My heart skipped a beat. He'd like to meet with you. That night, I barely slept. My only navy blazer, it had been bought from a thrift store years earlier. She carefully brushed off every wrinkle, then smiled. People notice confidence long before they notice clothes. I hugged her tightly. What if I fail? She gently held my face. You already survived heartbreak. An interview can't be harder than that. The next morning, I walked into Sinclair International headquarters. The building towered above Manhattan like a monument to success. Glass walls, Italian marble floors, modern artwork, everything screamed wealth. I felt completely out of place. The receptionist smiled warmly. Miss Collins? Yes. Mr. Sinclair is waiting. No paperwork, no security questions, no interview forms, just straight to the top floor. Edward Sinclair stood by the window overlooking Central Park. When he saw me, he smiled. I'm glad you came. So am I think. He laughed softly. Sit down. I expected questions about my grades, my resume, my experience. Instead, he asked, what was the biggest mistake you've ever made? The question caught me off guard. I thought for a moment. Trusting someone who measured my value by my bank account. Edward nodded. And what did you learn? That my future shouldn't depend on someone else's opinion. For the first time, he smiled proudly. Excellent answer. For the next hour, we talked, not about business, about life, failure, integrity, leadership. He asked me how I'd help a struggling employee, how I'd respond if a client insulted me, how I'd make difficult decisions. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. You know why I invited you here? I shook my head because while everyone else in that restaurant was serving food, you were serving people, I frowned. I don't understand. I watched you. When customers were rude, you stayed respectful. When another waitress forgot an order, you helped her instead of blaming her. You lead naturally. You just don't know it yet. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an offer. A paid position in Sinclair's Executive Leadership Development Program. The salary was more money than I'd ever imagined earning. Health insurance, tuition reimbursement, leadership training. I stared at the page. There has to be someone more qualified, Edward smiled. I've hired people with perfect resumes. Character is much harder to find. So, what do you say? Tears filled my eyes. I'd be honored. Over the next year, everything changed. I worked harder than ever. Sometimes 16 hours a day. Edward became more than my employer. He became the mentor I'd never had. He challenged every idea, corrected every mistake, celebrated every success. Little by little, I stopped thinking like someone trying to survive. I started thinking like someone capable of building something meaningful. One Friday afternoon, Edward stopped by my office. Emma? Yes? I'd like you to meet someone. I assumed he meant another executive. Instead, a tall man stepped into the room. Dark navy suit, confident smile, kind eyes. Emma, this is my son, Daniel Sinclair. Daniel extended his hand. I've heard a lot about you, I smiled. I hope only good things. He laughed. My father doesn't praise people often. So trust me. They were. Daniel wasn't what the media described. Business magazines called him the billionaire playboy. The tabloids claimed he only dated celebrities. None of it was true. He was thoughtful, respectful, and surprisingly humble. The first thing he asked me wasn't about business. It was, so, what's your favorite book? I laughed. That's your opening question? I've learned books tell you more about people than resumes. Over the next several months, we became close friends. We had lunch together, discussed new business ideas, volunteered at charity events, visited small businesses our company had invested in. Not once did Daniel treat me like I was beneath him. He respected my opinions, listened when I spoke, encouraged my ideas. It felt different, peaceful, safe. One evening, after finishing a long meeting, Daniel walked me to my car. You never talk about your past. I smiled sadly. There's not much to tell. I don't believe that. So, for the first time, I told him everything about Jason, about being left for a rich girl, about feeling like I wasn't enough. Daniel listened quietly. When I finished, he asked only one question. If Jason met you today, do you think he'd recognize you? I thought for a moment. No. Good. Because you've become someone stronger. Months passed. Then, one autumn afternoon, Daniel invited me to a small rooftop garden overlooking the city. There were no photographers, no reporters, no expensive decorations, just flowers, a quiet sunset, and us. He took a deep breath. Emma, I've spent my whole life meeting people who loved my last name. You never did. You challenged me. You believed in me. You made me want to become a better man. He reached into his jacket, dropped to one knee, and held out a small velvet box. Emma Collins, will you marry me? I couldn't stop crying. Yes, of course I will. 6 months later, we were married in a private ceremony. Only close family, close friends, and the people who truly mattered. No media coverage, no magazine, exclusives, exactly the way we wanted it. After the ceremony, Edward hugged me, then quietly whispered, "Welcome to the family." For the first time since losing my father, I truly felt like I belonged. 3 months later, Sinclair International hosted its largest annual charity gala. Hundreds of CEOs, investors, politicians, television personalities, and business leaders from across the country would attend. Daniel adjusted his tuxedo, then smiled at me. Ready? I looked at my reflection. A stunning emerald green evening gown, simple diamond earrings, my wedding ring sparkling beneath the ballroom lights. I smiled. I think so. Neither of us knew that among the catering staff hired for the evening was a man whose own business had recently collapsed. A man desperately working temporary jobs just to pay his bills. A man carrying silver trays through the ballroom. His name was Jason Miller. And in just a few minutes, he was about to serve a drink to the woman he once abandoned because she was poor. The grand ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers. A live orchestra filled the room with soft music. Business leaders, celebrities, politicians, and some of the wealthiest people in America gathered under one roof. Daniel gently took my hand. "You look beautiful," I smiled. "So do you," he laughed. "I wasn't fishing for compliments. I know, but you deserved one." For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. Neither of us noticed the catering staff entering through the side doors. Among them, a man adjusted his black serving jacket, balanced a silver tray on one hand, and silently reminded himself, "Just get through tonight." His name was Jason Miller. 2 years earlier, he believed marrying into wealth would make him successful. Instead, it destroyed everything. After Chloe's father discovered Jason had exaggerated his experience, he quietly ended both the relationship and the business partnership. Within months, Jason lost his high-paying job, his reputation, his apartment. Now, the man who once dreamed of private jets was serving drinks at other people's celebrations. Life had a strange sense of humor. "Table 12. The catering manager pointed. "Keep the champagne flowing." Jason nodded. As he turned toward the ballroom, his eyes landed on a familiar face. He froze. No, it couldn't be. Emma, she looked radiant, elegant, confident. The broken waitress he'd left behind was gone. Standing before him was a woman who looked completely at home among America's elite. Then, he noticed the diamond ring, and the man beside her. Daniel Sinclair. Jason's breathing stopped. His hands began to shake. A champagne glass slipped. He caught it just in time. Another waiter whispered, "You okay?" Jason nodded. "Yeah, but he wasn't, not even close." Across the ballroom, Edward Sinclair stepped onto the stage. The room quickly fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for supporting the Sinclair Foundation. Tonight, we're announcing our largest investment yet." Applause echoed through the room. Edward smiled. "But before that, I'd like to recognize someone very special." He looked toward me. "Emma, would you join me?" Daniel squeezed my hand. "You've got this." I walked onto the stage. The spotlight followed me. I had no idea. Jason was standing less than 20 feet away, holding a tray, watching everything. Edward continued. "When I first met Emma, she wasn't wearing designer clothes. She wasn't driving an expensive car. She was working 2 jobs while attending college." The audience listened quietly. I offered her an opportunity, but everything she achieved afterward, she earned herself. A giant screen behind us lit up. Photos appeared. Me working in the restaurant, graduation, business meetings, community projects. The audience applauded. Edward smiled proudly. "Starting next month, Emma Sinclair will officially become Chief Executive Officer of the Sinclair Foundation." The ballroom erupted into applause. Daniel's eyes filled with pride. My mother cried from the front row, and Jason nearly dropped the tray. After the presentation, guests lined up to congratulate me. Investors, governors, CEOs, television hosts, one after another. Jason stood silently against the wall. Invisible. The same man who once believed money opened every door couldn't even walk through the front entrance. About an hour later, I stepped onto the terrace for fresh air. The city lights stretched across Manhattan. Behind me, the door opened. I didn't need to turn around. I already knew. "Emma." Jason's voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I slowly faced him. He looked exhausted, ashamed, older than his years. "It's been a long time." "Yeah, it has." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked down. "I owe you an apology. I thought success came from standing beside wealthy people. I was wrong." I remained silent. I spent 2 years chasing money and lost everything that actually mattered. He laughed bitterly. "Turns out, the richest person in my life was the one I walked away from." He looked directly into my eyes. I've replayed that night 1,000 times. The restaurant. The things I said. I wish I could take every word back. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I truly am." I looked at the skyline, then back at him. "You know what hurt the most." He shook his head. "It wasn't that you left. It was that you made me believe I wasn't enough." Jason closed his eyes. "I know. And I hate myself for that. He took one careful step forward. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't. For the first time, I smiled. Not because he was suffering. Not because life had punished him. But because his words no longer had power over me. Jason, I forgave you a long time ago. His eyes widened. You did. Yes. But forgiveness doesn't mean I wish we'd ended up together. He nodded slowly. I understand. Just then, Daniel stepped onto the terrace. He looked at Jason, then at me. You okay? I smiled. I am now. Daniel slipped his hand into mine, without jealousy, without insecurity. Only trust, Jason noticed. And in that moment, he understood the difference. He once offered me excitement mixed with uncertainty. Daniel offered peace. And peace was worth more than all the money in the world. Before leaving, Jason quietly said, "Take care of her." Daniel smiled. "I plan to," Jason nodded. "I know you will." Then he walked away. Not defeated, not angry, just finally honest. 6 months later, the Sinclair Foundation launched a nationwide program, providing scholarships for students from low-income families. The first scholarship was named after my mother, the Grace Collins Scholarship. When she saw the plaque, she cried, "You didn't have to do this." I smiled. I know, I wanted to. That same evening, a young waitress approached me after the ceremony. She looked nervous. "I heard your speech," I smiled. "Thank you." She took a deep breath. "My boyfriend says I'll never become anything." For a second, it felt like I was looking into a mirror. I gently held her hands. "Don't let someone else's limits become your future." She smiled through tears. "I won't." Ending narration sometimes. The people who leave you become the reason you discover your true strength, not because they broke your heart, but because they forced you to rebuild it. The greatest revenge isn't making someone jealous. It isn't marrying into wealth. It isn't proving your ex was wrong. The greatest revenge is creating a life so meaningful that you no longer need anyone's approval. Because the right person will never ask how much money you have before deciding your worth. They'll recognize your value long before the world does. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. And remember, your bank account may change with time, but your character is what truly makes you rich. The end.